Thank you for joining today's Tech Talk, Dynamics 365 Project Operations, Budget Management, and Time-Phased Forecasting. Presenting for us today from Microsoft are Niranjan Maski, Principal PM Lead, and Satish Panwar, Principal FastTrack Solution Architect. And without further ado, Satish, over to you to get us started.
Thanks, Lutz. As part of this Tech Talk, we plan to go through budget management and time-phased forecasting business processes for light deployment and resource non-stock-based deployment for Dynamics 365 project operations. We do have budget management capability in our third deployment, which is stocked or production-based scenario deployment, but it will not be covered as part of this Tech Talk. What we will not cover today are also deployment types, detailed aspects of data migration, integration with other systems, licensing, or technical details. Some of these topics have already been covered in previous Tech Talks, which are part of this series. From an agenda perspective, today we'll provide you a quick introduction of project budget management. What are the steps required to configure, execute, manage project budget management, followed by a really good demo. And in the end, we will cover what are the values that are delivered to different personas, along with the different integrations to D365 Finance. And in the end, we'll also have Q&A. Dynamics 365 Project Operations is a product in the suite of Dynamics 365 products that empowers project-centric organizations. Project operations help organizations by providing the right tools to execute various business processes. Project operations connect sales, resourcing, project management, and finance teams in a single application to win more deals, accelerate project delivery, and maximize profitability. Here is a quick glance of features that are provided within each of the business processes. With project operations, sales teams are enabled to win more deals and accelerate the sales cycle with fast and accurate quotes, flexible pricing, and seamless transitions from estimate to execution. Resourcing is set to optimize resource usage by aligning the right people with the right skill to the right projects. Project managers can accelerate project delivery. Team members can improve productivity through collaboration and visibility with integration to Microsoft Teams. Finance can simplify project accounting with time and expense tracking governance, project costing, budgeting, invoicing, revenue recognition, compliance, and visibility. And finally, organization leaders get business insights to increase visibility across all teams, data, and process. One of the gaps that we had in the system was that customers were not able to record their budgets and track project execution to planned budget. We have now added budget management capabilities in the resource non-stock and light deployment of the project operations. With budget management feature, organizations are able to create and approve budget, track budget versus actuals, and manage budget revisions. Let's review a scenario that we'll be using for today's demonstration. So Prakash is a project manager at Contoso, and they have recently won a deal, which is estimated to be 1.5 million, and a forecast margin of 33 is planned. Prakash would like to create a detailed budget to help track the cost and ensure financial discipline. And he would like to do it in different categories so that he can track time, he can track expenses, and he can track materials as well. With the detailed budgeting and the financial structure, he would like to monitor spend against projections and manage any deviations and determine if there is an impact to the profitability or the execution of the project. He would also like to track the period-wise expenditure to identify any kind of budget violations and uptake forecast proactively. Ultimately, Prakash is aiming to finish this in $1 million while still maintaining the targeted profit margin of 33%. Before we get into the details, let's quickly review a high-level project budgeting process flow. Right? It starts with project manager, wherein a detailed project is created with all the work breakdown structure, with the resources, material, expenses, kind of adding into the estimates, which results in 3 different estimates: time, material, and expense. Now, as a project manager, you have the ability to use the previous estimates and create a budget. Or if you don't want to use these estimates, then create those budget manually as well. Once the budget is created, budget can be submitted for approval. And once it's approved, it's your finalized version of the budget, which can be used for tracking. Now, as the project progresses, time, material, expense actuals are created on the project by respective team members. Once those actuals are approved, they can now be tracked against the budget lines that have been previously recorded by the project manager on the project. Actual versus budget variance can be calculated. And if there are any variances, then it can be reviewed, and project manager can decide, do we want to create budget revisions? All the budget revisions can be tracked. Once budget revision is approved, we can again start tracking our actuals against the budget. So that's a very high level overview of project budgeting process flow. Next, we'll talk about what are the steps in budget management. And with that, I'll hand it over to Niranjan.
Let's start with the configuration, right? So the configuration of a budget involves creation of a budget periods, validating budget match priorities, which are by default available. And you'll also start with the planned estimates. Once you are good with the configuration, you'll start with the creation of a budget, where you could decide what is the source you want to use, whether you want to use your estimates, quotes, or contracts, or you want to add few more budget lines manually as well. This also time phases the budget lines into budget line details. That means you are going to distribute your budget line over a period of time. Project budget needs to be submitted for an approval. And once the approver validates the budget and approves it, it is available for tracking. In the tracking mode, all the actuals which are created in the projects periodically gets matched against the budget lines and also the budget line details. And the actuals will be updated, and you can track if there is any variance with respect to budget versus actual. If there is a case where you find a variance, you can update the forecast. At the same time, you can also revise the budget, check for variances, and if at all there are any actuals which did not match to your budget line, you can use them to create a budget as well. These are different steps. We'll run to the demo. The demo covers all these steps in detail, and we'll hear that. Yeah.
With that, let's get into the demo.
In project budget management, there are a couple of configurations you need to do for managing your project buckets. One being your budget period configuration, and other being your match priority. Let us look at one by one. Budget periods is the configuration which you need to do to ensure budget line details are created and your budget line are time phased in such a way that, say, you created a budget line for an year and you want to understand how exactly over a period of time the budget has been distributed and also spent as well, right? In project budget management, we have a capability where you can time phase your budget lines over week granularity, month granularity, quarter granularity, and year granularity. This budget period configuration would help you define those weeks, months, quarters, and years. For a week granularity of budget period configuration, you need to decide when your week is going to start, whether it is a Monday or a Sunday, and you should decide from which month to which month you want a time phase. Generally, it is the start of the project to the end of the project. But if you want to have a little bit of overlay in the before project and after project started, you could always do that. You can also time phase over a period of time with month granularity, and you can decide what you want to consider a month, whether it is the first weekday of the month or the first day of the month, calendar day of the month. Similarly, you can choose for a quarter and year when exactly you want to start. In this particular case, if I take a month granularity and I want to start from the first day of the month and just say save, it will create the budget periods from the entire year. That means December 2024 to November 2025. And also it decides if you create for all quarters and both the financial years, you can see the budget periods are created for December, January, February, and March. Suppose say I change this configuration to a week of the month and just say save. You'll be able to see the the start dates are updated to the first Monday of the particular month. This is how you define your budget periods. Once you define budget periods, any subsequent budget line creation would time phase the budget automatically. So this is an important configuration to be made before you create the budgets, if at all you want to time phase your budget lines into budget line details. Let us look at another configuration what we have, which is in match priority. Match priority would define the priority in which you check your actuals against the budget line for matching. This configuration is available at an organization level by default. You can also create this configuration at an project level, which overrides what we have at an organization level. Let us look at this configuration and see how it works. Let me take a context of cost and also take a transaction class as a material. If I look at this configuration, I have 6 parameters, 6 attributes, I would say, which define the way in which order in which the actual will be matched against the budget line. 0 being the highest priority and 50 being the lowest priority. The first parameter, which is an unit schedule, is something which is default and you cannot edit it. Otherwise, you can define all other attributes in the order in which you want, and you can also add your additional pricing dimensions into this match priority, which can be used during matching an actual against the budget line. In this case, I have defined task as my top priority, followed by product description, cost type, and account vendor. Suppose an actual comes in with all these parameters, or maybe some of the parameters, actuals will be picked up with all the parameters and checked against a budget line which is matching with all the parameters. Suppose say an parameter is missing, is not matching, and if the result is 0, the algorithm would ignore the least priority attribute and check the next budget line which matches with the other set of attributes. If it doesn't find, it will replace even that with null, and it will check for that with the rest of the attributes till it finds a matching budget line with maximum number of match priorities. Suppose say an actual is not matching to be any of the budget lines, it would be considered as an unmatched actual. So this budget match priority is a configuration which you can leave it as is if you don't want to attach with the default attributes. Otherwise, as per your organization needs, you have a specific match priority dimensions which you want to define. You can update this match priority, and you can do it at an organization level or at a project level before you create a budget. This is the second configuration which you are going to do. Once you define your budget period, if on a time phase, the next step is for you to create budgets. You can create budgets manually. That means you can create line by line, or you can import budget from multiple sources. There are 3 sources which you can create budget from. One is estimate, and another one is quote and the contract. Estimates are created once you plan your project, assign your resources to the plan, and also define your material and expense estimates. The estimates or time phase estimates would show you all the estimates against the project. You can use that as a source for you to create your budget lines and budget line details. The other source could be your quote. That means during your quotation period, you would have planned your project in very detailed manner where you define your plan, you assign your resources. We had created a quotation which actually gives an actual quotation which has been signed or sent to your customer. You can use that as a source for you to create the project budget. Or you could also use a contract for creation of a project budget. but the default source which you are provided is an estimate. And when you're creating a budget against the estimate, for time, for the projects where you have an assignment done, that means you are doing an project assignment to the resources in project operations, and you have your resource assignment filled in, you can use resource assignment as a source for creation of time-related budget lines. You can use project team members as a source in a case where you are running a project with an external scheduling project. That means you don't have assignments available in project operations, and you can create budget using project team members as your time budget line sources. And you also have a capability where you can create cost budget contingency. That means you might have plan for a contingency of say 5% for my 5% of time budget lines will get my contingency buffer, and 10% for my expense and 10% for mid-year. So once you plan your budgets, the contingency will be added on top of this the total calculated value, and it is available for you for budget calculations. You can choose to create cost budget lines and sales budget lines, and you can choose to create only one or other, right? You can say, I want only cost budget lines, or you can say, I want only sales budget lines as well. If you want to track only cost or your own sales or vice versa. By default, the import option will let you create both. There is also an option to summarize the timelines, expense lines, and material lines based on your budget match priorities. This is another place where you will have your budget match priorities come to play. What does this mean, right? So suppose say you have created estimates with a detailed plan of at a resource level. That means you assign resources and you have estimates available at a resource level. It may not be relevant for you to create a budget line at as much granularity at a resource level. Rather, you may choose to create saying that, hey, I want to track my budget at say a task level or a role level or at even a resource unit level. This will help you combine or summarize estimate lines into less number of budget lines so that you can track your budgets against fewer number of lines. And the way the summarization happens is exactly respecting your budget match parity. Suppose say you choose to summarize by role. That means it is understood that you are going to summarize it by task, which is the next highest match priority followed by role, right? If you want to choose to summarize by firm expense lines, say at a task level, you could do that, or a transaction category, you could do that. Once you decide the way you want to import your budget, if you click import, it will create a budget lines based on your selected sources and selected configuration. This is how you could.
In a case where I don't want to create budget from import, I can create budget manually by going here and clicking manual budget. It will create in budget version 1 in a draft status, and it will also mention the time-phased approach which has been chosen by the creation of the corresponding budget periods. And you can create cost budget lines and also sales budget lines. You come here and create a cost budget line, and you can give all the relevant details with respect to the corresponding transaction class, from which date to which date you want to track your budget, what is the role you want to track, what is the task you want to track, and how much money you want to track it against, or even the amount of quantity you want to track against. All these details can be filled in, and you can create cost budget lines and sales budget lines as well. And for all three transaction classes, time, expense, and material. I filled in few details like this, where I want to track time budget line for a PM, for a project manager against defined project scope. And there were 100 hours, and I just want to track it. I can create a budget line like this, which will create a budget line and also time phase it based on the time phasing approach which you have chosen. In this case, it is monthly, and it time phase the entire project budget which has been created, budget line which has been created against PM over a period of 7 to 8 months, 11 months here in this case. Budget line and budget line details which are created are editable inline. In this grid, say, for example, the total amount or the quantity which you want to track for project manager is not 100. And say you decide that I want to track 200 hours of this particular resource. Once this is saved, you can just go ahead and do an refresh. You will see the total 200 quantity is redistributed over a period of the next budget line details which are created, and the quantity has been updated accordingly. So that is how the budget line and the budget line details can be edited, updated. And once you are ready, you can go ahead and submit the budget for an approval. Let me go ahead and submit this budget for an approval. And once this budget is submitted for an approval, it will move to a state called in review state. Let me explain what are the different status budget version would go through. Once a budget is created for a particular version, it stays in a draft state. Once you submit the budget, it will move to an in review state. This is the state where a budget can be approved or rejected. In case where a budget is rejected, project manager will have an opportunity to edit the budget again, rework on it, and resubmit for a review. And in a case where the budget is clear or the approver has no questions on the budget, once the budget is approved, it will move to an approved state. This is the state where the entire tracking would happen. Unless a budget version is not in an approved state, the budget which are created will not be tracked against the actuals which are generated. So once you create a budget, submit it, and for a review, and it has been approved, this is a version which will be always used for tracking the budgets against actuals. This is very important. In a case where you want to revise a budget, the approved budget version can be moved to a revised state, and that has to go through a process of creating and revising a budget, which will be which will actually create a budget version in a draft state, and you update the needed details in that revised version, and again submit for an in review, which, if approved, will become a new approved version. We'll go through that in detail, but I'm just explaining in the context of status change. This is how the entire budget's status management would work, and there is a public documentation which you can go through for the details. Yeah, you could see the budget which I have submitted is in an in review state. I'll go ahead and approve this budget for an where the budget version which has been created as budget version 1 will go through a process of approval, where you will see a notification once the budget version is approved, and you'll also see the timeline updated about the status change of the budget. Yeah, you can see the budget is in an approved state, and the view also is in a tracking view, right? It is not in an editable view. This is the view where you have track costs for amount and quantity and track sales for amount and quantity. In this case, I have my budget line which is created only for an amount, and I have my budget lines created and available for tracking. Here in this case, I'm looking at track cost budget lines quantity view, where I want to track a project manager for 200 hours. And if you observe, the only fields which are editable are forecast quantity fields. All other fields are non-editable in this case. Only a project manager can update the forecast quantity based on the actual quantity, whatever they see. And if there is any variance, that will be visible here. And you also see two important columns, which is a consumption percentage and progress. I'll talk further about these two columns once we create a couple of time entries and track the same against this particular cost budget line and see how it responds. Yeah, now let's go back to the problem we started with. robotics arms installation project needs to be executed, the total project cost should be below $1 million. Given that Prakash, as a project manager, has created plans, assigned resources, planned material, and also expenses, and you could see time-phased estimates are created. I went ahead and created budgets from the time-phased estimates, and also got the budget approved. You can see all cost budget lines and sales budget lines are created, and you can also see the budgets in both quantity and amount in an approved state. This is a very this is a grid which actually works well for your all tab level or even the column level configurations. Like you can look for all the totals. If you want to see average, minimum, maximum, you can check that. You can group by multiple columns. All those grid level capabilities are available here. Now you could see I have created a budget for about $9,997, which is less than $1 million. And if I look at a quantity view, it also gives me the total amount of hours which I'm spending. And like so we'll be able to track these details together. Since I have an approved project budget of $1 million, close to $1 million, what I'm going to do is that I'm going to pass few time entries, material consumptions, and see how they are matched against this budget line. Since I am logging as a 10, I will be logging in the name of myself, Niranjan Maski, as a project manager who has been assigned to this particular project. And let's see how this responds. I have created a time entry against project robotics arms installation for the task different project scope. And I started on this particular project on the 1st of January, and I've added 4 8-hour days of time entry. And I also got my time entries approved. You can see these are the 4 time entries which got approved, which would generate the corresponding cost actuals. Considering the time entry which I have created against a project task different project scope, I would expect this particular time entry or the time actuals, time cost actuals, I would say, should match to the budget line which is created here, different project scope and resource being Niranjan Maski. You don't see them already updated here because there is a flow which runs periodically and updates the time entries which are created against the corresponding project budget lines. I ran it. I'll talk about the flow in a bit. Now, the columns what you see here, actual quantity, is a roll-up field. As you know, a roll-up field is the one which runs periodically. Generally, it is in 12 hours period. You can configure for your organization or your environment a bit faster, which actually rolls up all the actuals which are matched to a corresponding budget line, and the quantity would be updated here. Imagine a normal scenario where each of your resource will log a time entry, and all the time entries are available for budget matching. And as soon as the process would kick in with every 5 minutes of matching actuals to budget line, the actuals would be matched against the corresponding budget line. And periodically, that means on a daily basis, every 12 hours, all these quantities would be updated automatically. You might be thinking that, hey, I want it to be updated immediately. For that also, we have provided an option here. For example, you upload your timesheets and you want to see the actuals to be matched against this corresponding budget line immediately. You can select the corresponding line and say refresh actuals. This what it would do is that it would take all the lines which are matched with this corresponding budget line, all the actuals which are matched with the corresponding budget line, and try to accumulate or maybe add them together and update this particular column for actual quantity. Once you do this, even your actual amount also should be updated and available for your consumption. You could see here the actual amount being $3,840. Yep. So this is how you could update. You could update the corresponding budget lines which are matched to a quantity, corresponding budget lines which are matched to all the actuals and show them in one single view. Yeah, this is a good time to talk about the two columns which I just mentioned before: consumption percentage and progress. You could see out of 176 of hours, 32 hours I consumed, and it is aligning to the forecasted quantity as well. That means I have consumed 18% of total quantity, and I also achieved 18% of earned progress as well. Suppose, say, you as a project manager see that this is a little bit more, this is a bit high as per my understanding as of now, and you think that, or you predict that the number of hours which are needed for completion of this particular task may not be 176. It could be, say, 200 hours. Right? Let me just go ahead and update this for explanation. You could see the moment this is saved, the quantity variance is updated. That means there is a 24 hours of gap is there with respect to the total forecasted quantity and the budgeted quantity when you compare it with the actual quantity. And you could see the consumption percentage is indeed 18%, but the earned progress is adjusted accordingly. That means even though you consumed completely, the projected earned progress is less than what you actually has to achieve. So that is the importance of these two fields, these two columns, which will give you a clear indication of how your project is progressing and where you need to keep a tab of it. At the same time, the other column, which will give you a variance of quantity and also the amount in the amount view, you can clearly see how much is the variance, and you can take the necessary corrective actions as a project manager. Let me also show you how these 32 hours are distributed over a period of time. Right? The total quantity matching the corresponding budget line is one view, and we also have budget line details where you could see how exactly this particular budget line is, rather actuals are matching to the corresponding week what you expect it to be. In this case, I have a quantity of 32 which is matched to the first week of January, and you can see the total expected amount during that period available here, right? And it will also talk about the variance which we just added, and it is distributed all across. So if you look at it, the budget line which has been created is matched to the time entries or actuals which are created, and you could also match to the corresponding budget line details. Let me roll this back and leave it at 176, which is then for budgeted quantity. And we'll see how exactly, if an actual quantity overrun happens, how this entire field would respond. I went ahead and logged a few more time entries, and all those time entries are approved. And let me show you that. I had a bunch of time entries which are approved, and they are available in an approved state. Let me come here and try to refresh this again instead of waiting for the roll-up to run. And you could see the actual quantity is still 168. That means my total quantity which has been planned, which is 176, but my actual quantity is 168. Looks okay to me. I kind of achieved 95% of consumption and progress. However, let us look at one more view, which actually gives me an entire information of all the actuals which match to a budget line. So under actuals, which you can add against the project. So there are a couple of views which we have added: cost actuals, match to budget, cost actuals, unmatched to budget. I can see all these cost actuals which are matched to a budget line. And let me check if there are any unmatched actuals. Right? Yeah, there are a couple of unmatched actuals which did not match to any of the budget lines. Let's see what's wrong with this. This actual has been created for 1/10/2025. And the budget evaluation status and the result, which is available in every actual, shows that the evaluation status is complete, but the budget evaluation could not find a budget line for the dimensions on the actual. Let's look at what is there in the budget line and see if it makes sense or not. Yes. The budget line was created from 1/1/2025 till 1/9/2025. That means I don't have a budget line defined for these dimensions, defined project scope and Niranjan Maski beyond 1/9/2025. This is a good indication for you to have, hey, I mean, there was some actuals which were completely outside my planned budget lines. And let me see what I can do about them now. And you can see the cost actuals which are associated with an budget line, and you can see the corresponding association in this tab. Otherwise, you will see an error like this. In this case, I face the situation where I'm getting time entries beyond my planned budget. What I can do now? As a project manager, now I can revise my budget and ensure that the actuals which did not match to a budget line can be included in the budget during revision. Let me see how I can do it. I can go here and click revise, which will give me an option to revise my budget, where you can see my forecast values which are used, which are updated by a project manager can be considered. And also there is an option here, create budget lines from unbudgeted actuals. If I select this option as yes, I'll be asked from when you want to consider the unbudgeted actuals. I can say that here, I want to consider this starting from January 2025 and hit revise. Once the budget is revised, you can see version 3 is created. Earlier it was version 2. You can see the different project scope, start date and end date has been increased from 1/9 to 1/11, considering both the actuals which were missing to be accounted for against this different project scope budget line, because they are beyond the start and end date of the project budget line. And let us submit this budget and also get it approved as well. Yeah. Let me submit this, and it will take some time to get it approved. Let me click approve and move to the next topic. Once the revised budget is approved, you can see version 3 is created and approved, and the version 2 will remain in revised state. As a project manager, my version 2 was $997,000. If I look at the current budget, it is more than $1 million. Now I should be worried, and this gives me an opportunity to look at where I can optimize, make the adjustments and to the forecast, revise it and bring it back to below $1 million, which was the target for me as a project manager. For a moment, let us verify what happened with the actual, which did not match to the budget line in the first place. This was the actual which did not match to the budget line. Now you can see the status is completed and it is associated with the version 3 of a budget line, which is a different project scope. Yeah. So that is how the general budget to actual to budget association would work. And whenever there is any deviation, project manager can always revise the budget and create a new revision, get it approved, and take it forward from there. This is how a project manager can track the cost budgets and also the sales budgets to be as per the approved limits. Let us look at another aspect where one would need a revision and update of a project budget. Suppose there is a change of plan. Let me take the same task, different project scope. Earlier it was planned from 1 to 11. Now because of some reason, I might have to update the plan to end by 1:31. Sounds familiar? This is how generally the projects would work. Whenever there is a change in the task or the schedule or any needs of a particular project, you'll come and update the plans. Once you reach a stage where your plans are updated completely, you want to bring in the updated plans into your new revised budget. You could do that, one, by revising a budget and also re-importing from the estimates again, or from that matter, from any of the sources again. Now the plan is updated for the different budget scope from 1/1 to 131. Let me revise this budget. You could see the revision popping up. Let me just wait for a bit. Yep. Project budget is revised and revised version 4 is created in a draft status. Let us see what happened to the different project scope. It remained in 111, right? Because this is exactly copying the previous budget version of 3. Now, as a project manager, I can bring in updated plans or updated estimates, I would say, by doing a re-import of the budget lines, re-import of estimates, I would say, right? So let us bring in exactly the same estimates as before. I'm going to bring in the same source estimates with the resource assignments. Everything is the same. Let me try and import and see what happens to the different project scope task. Yeah. After re-import, you could see in the version 4, different project scope for Niranjan Maski. It has been expanded from 1st of February till 1st of January to 1st of February, covering the entire plan duration. This update of plans is something which can be used to revise the budget again. And once you revise, you can re-import so that the updated plans can be applied on new budget version, and you can get the budget approved and take it forward from there. Before we move to integrated environment, I just want to quickly show you the Power Automate flow, which is behind actuals to budget line matching, right? So this is a flow which is available in the environments Power Automate list of flows: project service, recurring schedule, project budget evaluation. This flow runs every 5 minutes, as you can see here. What it does is it picks all the actuals which are created in past 5 minutes and marked as scheduled state. It would be collated and matched against the all budget lines for that particular project. So this runs every 5 minutes. You can configure it to run every minute as well, but it's optimal to run every 5 minutes. So this is about the flow, which actually runs the actual to budget and evaluation logic. Now let us look at an integrated environment where project operations or project management related capabilities primarily happen on the database side or the CE side. And we do have an F&O environment, which is tightly integrated to this particular database environment. That is what we call as integrated or resource on-stock deployment. In such a case, when a project is created on the database side and a budget has been created and approved, what we are trying to do is that the budget which is created and approved on the database side would be moved to F&O or into the forecast tables of F&O. It is actually controlled by a couple of features. The features are: one, enable project budget management feature in project operations for non-stock resource-based scenarios. This will enable the forecasts being updated by the budget lines along with the estimates. And we also have one more feature to run this in a batch mode. Let me show you the new budget model which has been introduced. Earlier, you had a forecast model, which is by name EST. That means all the estimates of the on the C side would be transferred to the forecast on the FNO side. I have introduced one more new budget model called budget. It's just the name or a label of the forecasts which are created on the C side to be transferred to FNO. Now, in this case, I had the project which is created is available here. Let us look at the forecasts for this particular project. There is a button here, a new button which is introduced called Import Project Budget Lines. This action would import the budget lines from the project on the database side into the forecast on the FNO side. if I just click import, it will bring me the budget lines which are there on the database side over here. So there is one more way where the budget lines can be imported into the forecast, which is an periodic batch job, which is behind a feature flag right now. Import approved budget lines from database and into forecast. So this batch job can be configured as per your convenience. If the recurrence can be scheduled in like any other batch job, we prefer you import it every day and bring the details onto the FNO side forecast table. The budget lines on the database side would be copied into, rather transferred into the forecast and FNO side only for an approved budget version. That means which is the latest approved budget version. No draft budget lines will be transferred. No other state budget lines will be transferred here. So only the approved budget lines will be copied into the forecast tables on the FNO side. Once the data is available on the forecast, similar to how estimates used to work before, where your estimates which are copied to forecast, all the downstream systems on the FNO side was relying on the forecast which are created from estimates, which may change. Now, since the budget is an controlled spend or controlled estimate, I would say, the budget lines which are copied into forecast will automatically will become a controlled forecast. So that is the value which you're going to add in an integrated environment as well. And we didn't want to disrupt too much about the forecasts which are created, so we landed the forecast with a new budget model, new forecast model, which is called budget, and all the downstream systems are unaffected. This is how the project budget management is dealt with in resource non-stock scenario. In summary, we started with the project. We created the estimates. We configured the needed configuration for project budget management, budget periods, and also understood about budget match clarity. Created budget from estimates, and also added a couple of manual budget lines. Got the project budget approved, going through the budget lifecycle. And once we have an approved budget, it starts tracking the actuals which are created, whether by time entries, expense and material actuals, and it matched against the corresponding cost or sales budget lines. The actual amount and actual quantities are updated as per the matching. And we also saw how a project manager can update the forecast, how the consumption percentage and progress is updated. And in case there is a change of plan or an additional actuals are available which are not covered by the budget lines, you could revise and also create a budget lines from unbudgeted actuals. In case of a change of plan, you can re-import after a revision and get the project budget approved and continue the tracking. And you have multiple versions of a project budget, and you can compare multiple versions of a project budget and ensure that you can track how your budget management has progressed over a period of time. Finally, we also looked at resource non-stock scenario and explain about how exactly the project budget lines on the C side would be transferred into the forecast table on FNO side with a new forecast model called budget. That's the project budget management for you. Thank you. You have seen we started with the problem where Prakash, as a project manager, was trying to manage a budget of $1 million. And you could see Prakash was empowered to create a project plan and also estimate the same and create budgets from estimates, create budgets from quote, contract, or even estimates as well, and get the project budget approved. At the same time, define the budget match priorities, track the budget against actuals, and if there is a need for budget revision, he could do. And this they could do for both cost and sales budget line. Let's look at the value which is delivered by project management to different personas in project operations, starting with a project manager. This would help project manager to deliver their projects within the budget. And also, it will give you a progressive visibility of a cost burn rate and revenue flow. The segment and the dimension level visibility. For example, if you want to track a certain dimensions of the actuals and track the budgets against them specifically, a project manager could do that, right? And also, if you want to understand as a project manager, I have a budget line and I want to understand how exactly I'm burning over a period of time. You have a budget line details and actuals are matched against those budget line details as well. By looking at the variances, consumption percentage and progress, I should be able to take a preventive and corrective actions and also help me reduce in cost variance as project manager. Now, we also have a persona called practice manager who is responsible for multiple projects or the entire practice. We could help them. This project budget management would help to forecast the cost burn rate and revenue flow across the practice. This will also help aid the visibility of the cost consumption across multiple dimensions across the practice. Imagine a case where you have you need to track how am I burning the cost for all my project managers across my practice, or how are my architects burning my time, burning the time and how exactly we are burning their hours. So those can be actually monitored by a practice manager. In case you want to build and comparative studies against the projects, which can be easily built as per the organization needs. If you look from a CFO or a finance point of view, ability to create cost and sale forecast in real time across the company is a huge value add. Getting a visibility into their cost burn rate and also a sales inflow in near real time is a dream come true for most of the CFOs and finance. This will also help them to analyze how they can optimize the cost and identify any potential leaks, both from a cost point of view and also a revenue point of view, and help them manage these both. In a case where we have an integrated deployment, that means we have a Dataverse and also a finance and operations talking to each other. There are existing maps, existing integrations available between multiple entities, which are shown in this diagram, where the gray box talks about Dataverse entities and the green box below talks about the finance and operation apps. What we have done is that in the current, without budgets, estimates were integrated to forecast. So any estimates which are created in the project on the Dataverse side were directly integrated and posted into and forecast tables on the F&O side. In a case where you wanted to understand the forecast in a more controlled manner, right? Say where you want, when an estimate change, the forecast also will get updated automatically. You don't want that to happen. In that case, you can use a budget forecast model, which is a new model which is introduced, which simply brings the approved budget lines into forecast tables. So earlier you used to get an unmanaged or not tracked estimate lines. Now you have an option of bringing the approved budget lines into your forecast tables. We did not disrupt too much this particular area. The reason being there are downstream integrations which are built by our customers and existing partners based on the forecast tables. We just introduced another option of bringing the budget lines along with the estimates with a new forecast model called budget. Yeah, these are behind two features right now. Enable project budget integration in project operations, and if you want to run this in a batch schedule, you need to enable this feature as well. Otherwise, you can import them manually. And we also have this is the batch job which I showed in the demo as well. And this is a Power Automate flow which actually triggers every 5 minutes, and you can configure to run it however you like. Let's talk about a bit of a feature roadmap, right? Whatever we have done right now is enabling a project manager to run their, and also a company to run their projects by tracking the budgets very closely, both at cost and sales side. We are working on improving the user experience with the time phasing of the budget line details. And we're also planning to add additional insights at a project level, helping PM to take necessary actions and cues. There was a question in the chat as well, which we responded accordingly. Also, we're going to add an AI augmented budget management. This is going to be like how we have AI enabled or AI driven features all across the project operations. Budget management also is going to have a few AI related capabilities, which will help project managers manage their budgets well. That's all. There are few resources which we leave in this links, which will help you to track this details with more, including the release waves and also the ideas in the FastTrack portal.
Thanks, Niranjan. At this point, is there any question in Q&A that you would like to kind of take up, Niranjan, that you want to kind of respond?
Yeah, so there are a couple of questions which I can take and respond as well. So there was one question about what happens in a case and the transactions which are posted before budget is approved, what will happen to them. I did not cover that part in demo, but if you have a system open, you can go to any other page and any actual list page or even actual detail page. There is a small little button in the top ribbon which is called Reevaluate Budget Association, which will help you reevaluate any actual for budget evaluation. So if there are transactions before, you can just go ahead and click them. How can we restrict if transactions is exceeding the budget? So this is one explanation which you want to provide. Generally, what happens is in project budget management, you saw variance being shown. You saw the consumption percentage and progress being different. There are many cues for a project manager to see how my project budget consumption is progressing. Generally, in PMA, in other places, the current practice is that if a budget control is enabled, transactions are stopped. Imagine a scenario: you're running a project and you have 100 people running on working on your project, and because of some reason, project manager did not check how my budget consumption is progressing, and they exceeded the budget, and all 100 people are stopped by law for logging their timesheets. That's not a very pleasant experience for all 100 people who are on your project. Same is the case with a material usage or an expense entry. The time which is supposed to be logged is already consumed. The material which is supposed to be consumed, which logged, is also consumed. Expense is already it is in past activity. If you stop people to make those entries, it is not something which is going to help anybody there. So the call which we took was we will provide as many details and cues for project manager to help them track their budgets well. And in case there is a variation, we are not going to stop the transactions. We'll let them flow in, let them accumulate at a variance, and the project manager can take and remedy actions like getting then budget revised or getting an additional funding or take any corrective actions there. So during implementation, one can easily add a few more notifications or emails or whatever the details you want as agreed by your customer. You'll be able to add additional notifications when the project budget is going beyond. If there is an additional variance, you can add additional notifications as per the customer needs. So that is the suggestion we have for how you want to deal with when the transactions are exceeding the budget.
It's up to you for final comments.
All right, yeah. This concludes today's Tech Talk event. Thank you for attending, and thanks to our presenters and to you, our audience, for attending our Tech Talk today. We hope you have a great rest of the day ahead. Thank you.